There are so many storylines for this Hurricanes versus Aggies matchup, and I can't believe Texas A&M went 11-1 with this turnover margin.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing, and yeah, there is. When you're 5 days away from the biggest game the Miami Hurricanes have played in since the Fiesta Bowl in January of 2003, it's a happy Monday. I'm Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube. We're part of the now #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. On this loaded episode, we'll talk about which of the so-called experts are picking Miami or against Miami for this Saturday afternoon. I was going to say Saturday night, but no, it's a nooner. It's 11 a.m. local time out there. Hurricanes against the Texas A&M Aggies. DJ Lagway is in the transfer portal. Florida Gators are losing their starting quarterback. I'll tell you my view from a Miami perspective and, whether or not I think the Hurricanes should take a look at Lagway. But let's talk about storylines for this matchup against Texas A&M. Now, I mentioned turnover margin, which I think, obviously, it's important for Miami to win that on Saturday. It might not be as important for Texas A&M as it is for Miami. When I was taking a look at some of the statistical deep dives for this matchup, so our Hurricanes are very good nationally when it comes to turnover margin, more takeaways than giveaways. Hurricanes are tied for 12th nationally at a +9. They've had 9 more takeaways than giveaways this season. This is a shocker with Texas A&M. And honestly, I don't mean this as an insult to them. In fact, I think this is a compliment. When you are tied for 111th nationally with a -7 turnover margin, and you still win 11 out of the 12 games that you played in the regular season, that goes to show you the Aggies are making up for it in a lot of other ways. Now, if Miami wins the turnover margin this weekend, I think the Hurricanes have a really good chance. But Texas A&M, I think this is a testament to how explosive their offense is. They generate so many big plays that it can compensate for the turnovers. And it's also evidence as to how good their defense is, of course, to be able to keep them in games when they commit so many giveaways. But, yeah, to be -7 on the season and to have damn near gone undefeated this year, that's pretty darn impressive for Texas A&M. That was a number that stood out to me, right? Miami, number 12 nationally in turnover margin. Texas A&M 111th, and yet Texas A&M won more games this year than Miami did. I'll tell you another factor for this one. Penalties. Both of these teams are bad in that department. And you'd probably be really surprised when I tell you that the Aggies actually have been penalized for more yards this season than Miami. Texas A&M tied for 117th nationally in penalty yardage per game. Miami ranks 108th. Both are very, very bad. Now, penalties are obviously going to be a storyline in this one because the Aggies, despite being a more penalized team than Miami this year, they've got a huge advantage of being in their home stadium with over 100,000 of their fans making noise every time Miami has the ball. Those false start issues that Miami's had throughout the year, you're going to be tested in a way you haven't been tested all season long. So the pressure is going to be on Miami to commit fewer penalties in this one because, again, it's going to be very difficult for the Hurricanes to win this game if they are more penalized or significantly more penalized than Texas A&M. It's too tough of an environment for Miami to expect to lose the penalty battle and come out on top. Now, I think, I wanted to start with those stats because they're so crazy. Again, Miami fans would have never guessed that the Aggies are more penalized than Miami is, and you probably wouldn't have guessed how bad they are when it comes to turnover margin. But I think for the Hurricanes, my top storyline for this weekend is Miami's offensive identity. Hurricanes scored 155 combined points over their final 4 games of the regular season. That's an average of 38.75 points per game over the final 4. The offense opened up, became more explosive. Now, Texas A&M, to be fair, better than any of those defenses Miami faced at the end of the year. A lot better than Syracuse's defense, better than North Carolina State's, better than Virginia Tech's, better than Pitt. Pitt has a good defense. Texas A&M's is better. So this is going to be maybe the best test, offensive versus defensively, Miami has seen all season long. So Miami's identity needs to remain open, explosive, and unpredictable. And I think the Hurricanes are going to stick with the identity that got them to this point, right? Obviously started the season very conservative on offense, but once Miami was able to find that outside running game with Gerard Pringle, once Miami was able to unlock more weapons in the receiver core, Keelan Marion really stepped up late in the year. Miami got some good plays out of Dalen Upshaw. C.J. Daniels, when he came back for the Pittsburgh game, was a factor again, scoring a big-time touchdown. And Malachi Toney, who is Miami's most explosive player and arguably their best offensive player, really got better, took over, and was involved in the offense in more ways towards the end of the year. So I think it's very important for Miami to stick with the offensive identity that ended the season and not revert back to who they were in September and October. I think it's very important. And I know this is a really, really tough game, and you're going to be tempted to get conservative in a game like this, but I think Miami needs to stay with their offensive identity, and it obviously helps that your quarterback has been playing at a high level. So another huge storyline, and I mentioned how many people fit into that building. They don't build stadiums like that anymore because the newer stadiums, the seats are a lot wider, right? You're talking like 60K in most of the newer buildings. Kyle Field packs 110,000 people. The building is sold out, and I would imagine over 100,000 of those are going to be rooting for the home team. So the Hurricanes, to deal with that crowd, you need to start fast. You need to score early and try to take that. You're never going to take them completely out of it, but try to make that crowd at least somewhat conservative, because if A&M jumps out to a 10-point, 14-point lead, it's going to be really, really tough, and you could see the game getting out of hand if you allow the Aggies to jump out big on you early. Another huge storyline for me in this one. Which quarterback is going to make fewer mistakes? Which one is going to make the key mistakes? Marcel Reed of Texas A&M has thrown 6 interceptions in his past 4 games against Power 4 opponents. So Marcel Reed, back in October, he was right in the Heisman conversations, right? If he had played, the final month of the year the way he played over the first 2 months of the year, he would have been in New York. Maybe wouldn't have won the trophy, but he would have been there, with Fernando Mendoza. Congratulations to him. The sore loser, Diego Pavia, Jeremiah Love. Like, Marcel Reed was on track to be at that ceremony, but he had some up and down games late in the year, including 6 INTs in his final 4 games against Power 4 opposition. And, of course, Carson Beck, he's got that reputation. I think it's a little bit overblown, but, Carson, of course, he had a 4-interception game earlier this season against Louisville, so he's going to try to avoid that sort of performance. Both of these teams have top defensive lines that's going to try to make the opposing quarterback uncomfortable. Miami, for their credit, has the 4th-rated pass blocking grade in America. That's the Pro Football Focus grade, top 5 in protecting their quarterback. So let's keep that going. We'll talk about other factors when we come back, including bulletin board material. Coaching carousel is affecting Texas A&M, not Miami to this point. And yeah, I'll share my piece when it comes to DJ Lagway, how you would view that as a Miami guy. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, the holidays are officially here, and gift hunting season is still on. And if you want something that's meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap. It's a way to share memories. Because Aura isn't just your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it. So when they plug it in, the memories are already there, guys. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. Folks, there are so many people in your life that this gift is perfect for. Your spouse, your parents, your grandparents. Are there any newlyweds in your life? Anyone who loves photos is going to love this. You can get endless uploads of pictures and 30-second videos through the Aura app. Add a personalized message right inside the frame so the gift feels thoughtful the moment it's opened. Folks, this is a holiday gift that actually gets used, not forgotten in some drawer. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames named #1 by Wirecutter by using our promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's AURAFrames.com, promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning Locked On Canes at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. And folks, thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you're a true diehard Hurricanes fan, the Everydayer All Access tier is built for you. You'll get one-on-one text access with me, all access episodes, an exclusive newsletter, and a 15% discount to the Locked On merch store. Head to lockedoncanes.supercast.com to join the Everydayer Club and unlock all access. You can also find the link in the show notes below. All right, so other storylines in this one for me. Again, we talked about the penalties and turnover margin, Miami's offensive identity. I think it's so important to be the team that got you here over the final month, dealing with that crowd, quarterbacks making key mistakes. I know Beck has that reputation. Marcel Reed also struggled with turnovers late in the season. How about these external factors and bulletin board material? So I know Miami is not that disciplined when it comes to penalties, but here's an area where Miami might be the most disciplined team in the entire country, and that is in the press room. Because the Hurricanes, players and coaches, they never give bulletin board material to their opponents. Not once in the Mario Cristobal era have I ever heard a Miami player say, like, oh, yeah, I don't think that opposing quarterback is going to give us a hard. I think we're going to handle him. Marcel Reed, yeah, I don't think he's that good. Or, Cassius Howell, yeah, we're not worried about him sacking our quarterback. We're going to handle him. Like, you never hear that from Miami. They always, yeah, you know what? This is the best quarterback we've faced. That's the best edge rusher we've seen all year. This is the best defense in the country. Like, Miami does an impeccable job of respecting their opponents and not giving them any sort of bulletin board material. On the flip side, Texas A&M, not so much. We've had in the last week plus since this matchup was announced, offensive tackle Trey Zune and also quarterback Marcel Reed, who backed up his left tackle. They both dismissed Rueben Bain as being anything to worry about. We're going to handle him. We're not worried about Rueben Bain. Mike Elko, the head coach of A&M, I don't think he meant it to come off this way, but he referred to Malachi Toney as, quote, the little freshman slot, end quote. I mean, those are the sorts of comments. And when Mario Cristobal was asked about this stuff, his comment was no comment, is what he said. But you can imagine Rueben Bain, who keeps that maniacal notebook of bulletin board material, is remembering what the A&M left tackle and quarterback were saying, that he's not going to be an issue. He's not a threat. We're gonna shut him down. And, maybe Toney doesn't like to be referred to as the little freshman slot. So, these guys are going to have extra motivation to make Texas A&M pay. There's also, and, I don't know how much of a factor this is going to be, because these gentlemen are going to give their best to the spot that they're in for as long as their playoff run lasts. But for what it's worth, Texas A&M is losing both of their coordinators to other jobs. Now, they're both going to be coaching in this game. They're not leaving till the run is over. But offensive coordinator Colin Klein is set to become head coach at his alma mater at Kansas State. And defensive coordinator Jay Bateman is on his way to Kentucky to become their DC. So, you've got a couple of your, most important assistant coaches kind of working two jobs at once. Is that going to be a factor? Again, I don't want to overplay this and say they've got one foot out the door, but it's, something that A&M is dealing with that Miami is not, because we don't have any of our current staffers are not in line to take other jobs at this moment. So it's something to think about. Another factor for this game, key storyline, injuries and recoveries from those. From Miami, there's some buzz that Keionte Scott might try to give it a go this week. Miami's top-graded nickel corner. Before his injury in Game 10, Scott was the highest-graded defensive back by Pro Football Focus in the entire country. And it seems like it's a game-time decision whether he plays or not. He's missed the last 2 games. For Texas A&M, they're expecting to get their top running back, Le'Veon Moss, back. But he missed, I think, the final 5 games of the season. He was out a long time. Even if he is fully healthy, is there going to be, a snap count on him? How much is he really going to play? So those are a couple of factors to look at. And for Miami, outside of the Keionte Scott thing, sounds like everybody else is good. David Blay, defensive tackle, was banged up late in the year. I think he's fine now from what I know. We'll find out. O.J. Frederick, cornerback who was banged up late in the year, he did return before the end of the season. I think he's fine now. C.J. Daniels did return at the end of the season. Receiver, which, man, he could be a factor in this game. It seems like he's good now. And also the last storyline that I'll put down here as being a big one heading into this game, the huge moment it is for both of these teams. It's the college football playoff debut for both. Neither the Hurricanes nor the Aggies have been there. Miami, of course, our last championship was 2001, which is kind of a long time ago, but I think the last championship for Texas A&M was like the 40s. Like we're talking World War II or pre-war. So it's been a minute for them. And so this is the biggest game Miami's played in since the 2002 national championship, played in January of 2003. For Texas A&M, this has to be the biggest game they've ever hosted in their stadium, right? To have the home playoff game. So, for, again, that massive crowd, and there's going to be some Miami fans out there, but we're going to be outnumbered. That's going to be the biggest game they've ever hosted in that stadium before. So this is a massive, massive moment for both. All right, how about this one? Shortly before we started the show this morning, I see the headline, and I always have to make sure that these things aren't fake, because there's a lot of people who imitate Pete Nakos from On3. There's a fake account, DJ Lagway, Florida Gators starting quarterback. He is entering the transfer portal. That is confirmed. In fact, DJ Lagway even issued a statement confirming that he's hitting the transfer portal. Now, if I look at this from a Miami point of view on Lagway, I am personally not interested. I don't speak for the coaching staff. I don't know if Miami's going to give him a call or if he's going to give Miami a call. Those things go both ways, obviously. But my logic on Lagway, and I'm going to go deeper on this than just to say, hey, he sucks. I know some Miami fans are saying that. I mean, Lagway had a tough year. Florida had a tough year, though. It's not all on the quarterback, but 2,200 passing yards this season, 16 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. That's a really, really bad ratio. That's a lot of INTs. 1 rushing touchdown scored this year. So 15 total touchdowns, 17 total touchdowns to 14 interceptions. Really, really tough year for Lagway, but that's only part of my logic for not wanting Lagway in Miami. Now, I know that, hey, this guy is and was talented enough that he was one of the top quarterbacks out of high school just a couple cycles ago, class of 24. And he did show signs last season as a true freshman that he can be a really, really good player. But with how much he regressed in his second year, I look at DJ Lagway as someone who requires a lot of development still. And if you're talking about developing quarterbacks, I would rather develop our own guys. With that word in mind. I'm not saying don't go into the portal to get a quarterback, but I'm saying if you're going to go to the portal, don't get someone who requires as much development as DJ Lagway. I think that completely defeats the purpose of Miami going into the transfer portal for a quarterback. So the way that I look at it, we've talked about names out there. I'm a huge fan of Sam Leavitt from Arizona State, who's in the portal. I know LSU is reportedly going to be interested there. I'm a big fan of Brendan Sorsby from Cincinnati. I think he's got a ton of talent. We'll see who else jumps into the portal quarterback-wise, but those are probably my top 2 guys at this moment. But I say if you're going to grab a portal quarterback, the way Miami's done it the last couple of years, obviously Cam Ward was a huge success. The defense let him down. Now Carson Beck had a successful year. He's in the playoffs. if you're going to grab a portal quarterback, you need to find someone who's virtually a finished product, right? Someone who's going to raise both the floor and the ceiling of your offense. I'm not going into the portal for someone who needs as much development as DJ Lagway. So again, we've got our own guys in the room that I want to see developed, right? I mean, hopefully, I don't know for sure if Emory Williams is going to stay or go, but this is a guy who's been developing in your offense for the past 3 years, right? You got Luke Nickel heading into his second year. You're developing him. You're going to develop Darion Coleman, who had an awesome senior season at Jones High School in Orlando and came this close to winning a state championship, played really, really well for Jones this year. When it comes to development, I'm focusing on the guys already in the room. I'm not taking a guy from the outside to develop him. I'm taking a transfer quarterback if it's someone who's ready to plug and play, be your QB1, and lead you to a college football playoff next year. I don't think DJ Lagway is that guy. And also, if I'm going to get really specific on the characteristics that I want in my next starting quarterback, I want someone who is unquestionably mobile, right? Someone who's a legit dual threat, and Lagway is not that. Can run a little bit, but he's not a dual threat guy. In fact, I was hearing the take of our friend Brian Smith from the Portal Pod. He was reacting to Lagway hitting the portal, and he mentioned probably one of the factors why Lagway's hitting the portal is, the new OC at Florida, Buster Faulkner, who's been at Georgia Tech, and you see the way Haynes King plays quarterback for them. Faulkner's offense demands a true dual threat quarterback, and that could be one of the reasons why Lagway left. And I know this year Miami has a guy who's not a true dual threat quarterback, but I think Carson Beck has enough other characteristics that compensate for that. I don't believe DJ Lagway does. So I would prefer Miami's next starting quarterback to be someone of that dual threat mold who can hurt you with his legs as much as he can with his arms. So I'm not interested, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments below about DJ Lagway, who obviously played for a rival, and he did okay his true freshman season. This year was really, really rough for him and for the entire team. Who's picking Miami to win on Saturday? Besides me. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. So you're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. I thought the perfect example of live betting was when you could feel the momentum changing in that Bills comeback. Josh Allen, what a player. That comeback against New England was the perfect example of live betting, when you could see the momentum and feel the momentum shifting there, folks. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as the guys heat up on FanDuel. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. You got the Miami Dolphins taking on the Steelers tonight in Monday Night Football, so make sure you have FanDuel ready. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. And it's going to be a fun rest of our week, guys, as we prepare for Miami 3.5-point underdogs on the road at Texas A&M. And again, I think being a 3.5-point dog, you're getting respect there because you get about 3 points. You give about 3 points for being the home team. So it's virtually a push 'em or a pick 'em, I should say, not a push. Virtually a pick 'em in the eyes of the handicappers. And I was looking through some of the different publications and some of the national content creators that I enjoy. In terms of who's picking Miami, I know Miami fans aren't always that happy with Heather Dinich from ESPN because I call her the Grim Reaper. Like usually her reporting on the CFP committee was usually like, Miami's not going to get him. And then they got in. And Heather reports on what she's told, right? She is telling you the buzz that she's hearing from the committee. So I don't blame her for that stuff. And for what it's worth, Heather Dinich not only has Miami winning this game, she's got Miami advancing to the national semifinals, which would mean beating Texas A&M and beating Ohio State. And then she ultimately has Miami losing to Georgia. And man, if we get there, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But, Carson Beck versus his old team, that's a movie. Like that is a Disney movie in the making if Beck could pull that off. But we got to get through A&M and Ohio State before we could even really think about that. So Heather Dinich has Miami winning and advancing. ESPN's Adam Rittenberg, who predicted all of the playoff games and bowl games, he's got Miami winning 31-28. Then there's a lot of the other prominent folks out there that are picking A&M, but I did notice, like I was watching J.D. Pickell, who's picking A&M. Josh Pate did pick A&M. Andy Staples from On3 picked A&M. Most of these people, even though they're picking Texas A&M, they all give Miami respect and say it's going to be a really close game. It's not impossible for Miami to win, but a lot of them think that the crowd, the home environment for the Aggies, not to mention, their pass rush. Cassius Howell has 11.5 sacks on the year. And, Marcel Reed, his dual threat nature, that those could be some of the differences. But they don't expect the margins to be that wide. Personally, I think if Miami, as they are top 5 nationally and just in generating pressure. In fact, I think they might be top 2 nationally in pressure. Rueben Bain is top 5 nationally in pressure, and Mesidor is also way up there. I think Miami can do enough to give Reed a hard time. And Miami's rushing defense has been so good this year, top 7 in the country. I think they can match up well enough to slow down A&M's explosive offense. Personally, I've got Miami 31-24 is the final score that I'm going with. I see a lot of the projected final scores are like 31-28, 31-27 in either direction. Most of the experts are picking Texas A&M. But all of them agree Miami should be able to hang in, and Miami can absolutely win this football game. Man, so we were talking transfer portal earlier, and I know like outside of quarterbacks, some of the players I'm going to be watching, quarterback is the low-hanging fruit. It's easy for everyone to talk about, but Nick Marsh, the really talented playmaking wide receiver from Michigan State, he's in the portal. That's one I would love Miami to take a look at. If Miami does go in for a running back, I could see them maybe bringing somebody in if somebody transfers. Obviously, everyone wonders what's Jordan Lyle going to do, with him not getting much usage this year. If Miami does go in for a running back, C.J. Baxter, who's leaving Texas, someone Miami recruited heavily out of high school, that could be someone to look at running back. Another receiver, I think we're waiting on a verdict from him. We don't know for sure if he's going to leave or not, but Auburn obviously has a new coaching staff coming in. Cam Coleman, if he were to decide to leave Auburn in the portal, I think he's still making up his mind there. That would be one. Obviously you would have competition there. Same thing for Nick Marsh. There's going to be a lot of teams that want these top receivers. But man, if Cam Coleman decides to leave, I think he's 2 years in college, very good at Auburn. I would be interested there. And Edwin Joseph, defensive back, who is leaving Florida State, South Florida kid, Chaminade. Miami recruited him heavily out of high school. That's someone you might want to take a look at. I think Miami could go for at least one DB in the transfer portal. So, yeah, there are other players outside of quarterbacks that we're going to be keeping our eyes on as more and more guys say they intend to leave the portal. We talked last week about Nathaniel Ray Joseph, who's leaving Miami, the slot receiver. Just bad timing for him here, being behind Xavier Restrepo for 2 years, and then Malachi Toney shows up and becomes the player that he is. So we wish Ray all the best, and then one other Miami player has announced his intention to leave in the portal, and that's Dalen Russell, second-year defensive tackle. I wish him all the best. I think he could have, I don't know if he ever would have been a starter, but he was working his way into becoming a rotational guy, and I think Russell showed a lot of improvement from his first year into this year. His second year recorded 6 tackles this year, so I'm kind of bummed he's leaving, but I guess if Russell feels like there's more playing time to be had somewhere else, I will wish him the best. I want these guys to be happy, and I want them to maximize their careers, whether it's Miami selfishly or somewhere else. I wish Ray Joseph and Dalen Russell all the best. And then you never know. I mean, after Miami's playoff run is over, hopefully that's not till late January, mid-January. After the playoff run is over, more guys may decide to hit the portal. But for now, that's all we got. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen Thank you for smashing the like button, for subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your pods. And we're going to talk to you again tomorrow on a Truth Teller Tuesday on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.